Welcome to Science for Hire with your host, Dr. Charles Handler. Science for Hire provides 30 minutes of enlightenment on best practices and news from the front lines of the employment testing universe.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Science for Hire. I am your host, Dr. Charles Handler, and I have a really great guest today, somebody I've always enjoyed listening to, has some very, very interesting and passionate takes about what's going on in our field, and I'm going to call him George, but that's not actually his first name, and I can't, for the life of me, can't get it pronounced correctly. And as you know, if you listen to our show here, I don't like messing people's names up because the name is a very personal thing, and it's not good to get it wrong. It's a sign of respect to get it properly done. So, Georgi Yankov of DDI, AI aficionado, and a guy with some clairvoyance about this stuff. So we're going to talk about that today. So go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us how to pronounce your name properly, please.
Thank you, Charles, for the amazing intro. It is Georgi Yankov, and Georgi like Lady Gaga, so a hard G. Many people call me Georgie, but I prefer to be called George.
George, okay, well, there you go. And I'm going to ask this, and I hope I don't know. There's nothing wrong with it. What's your heritage? I'm going to guess that you're Russian, but you may not be.
Well, God forbid you're Russian these days. No, I'm not. Lucky me, I'm Bulgarian.
Oh, nice.
So
very nice.
A little bit to the south. Yeah, southeastern Europe. Bulgaria is on the Balkan Peninsula.
Yeah.
Very old country.
I have actually not been to Bulgaria, but I have stood on a line between Romania and Bulgaria, but I didn't cross the line because I was at the beach on the Black Sea, and there literally was a border right there. I'm trying to remember the name of the beach I was at, but yeah, they had a line, and then there was a woman with a gun and a nice snappy uniform on the Bulgarian side, and I really wanted to go over, but I didn't have my passport or anything, so I didn't do it. But it's beautiful over there.
So you were on the Romanian side, correct?
Yeah. Trying to remember the name of the beach I went to. It was about maybe 15 years ago or so. But my heritage is Russian, actually, but I'm not from there. My grandfather came over from there, and where he was is kind of fluctuated between Poland and Russia a lot. So Bialystok, but I have been to Russia before. Like I said, I've seen Bulgaria, but I haven't been inside there. I was coming into the show thinking it could be Russian, and I was thinking of my Russia stories, but I went there in the mid 90s with my dad. My dad is a clinical psychologist, very old school. And we were in St. Petersburg, and he said, all right, well, we're just going to go over to this institute, and we're going to see if they'll let us into Pavlov's lab over here. And sure enough, we no appointment, no nothing. I found myself in actual Pavlov's lab. I mean, there were no dogs in there, but they had all the equipment and stuff. And as a psychologist, that was a pretty cool moment for me, even though I don't use dogs in my work.
Since we are talking on laboratories of old renowned psychologists, a story for your bag of stories.
Good.
Bulgaria is it's a good country for psychology historically, because the first students of Wilhelm Wundt were some of them were Bulgarians. So they reproduced his lab, his equipment in Sofia University, and his lab was blown up in the Second World War. But the equipment in Bulgaria survives to this day. And as far as I know, the dean of our faculty of philosophy there and the sciences, they are responsible for the key.
Oh, okay.
So I can arrange you to see.
Oh, nice.
Equipment.
Yeah, I would love to go over there. So how did you find your way from there to sitting in a nice office with some beautiful plants and artwork in
In
Pittsburgh at a
Bridgeville.
DDI. Yeah.
Yeah, in Bridgeville, Pennsylvania. Yeah, it's close by Pittsburgh. I live in Pittsburgh. How I got a master's scholarship from Fulbright many years ago, like 12 years ago. I got my master's in Baruch College in
Oh
City
yeah.
University of New
Oh yeah.
York.
Sure.
I went back and worked as a psychometrician in the only testing company in Bulgaria. I did the norms for the Wechsler scales for children. I worked on the MMPI, on California Psychological Inventory, many inventories. I was so fortunate to be exposed to tests that here nobody would give you at the master's level. I realized I needed IRT and hardcore psychometrics, and I applied for a PhD program and got accepted at Bowling Green.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Where I started 2015 under Mike Zickar and graduated 2019. I was an intern at Hologram for a year, and my dissertation was on faking on personality tests. That's my research interest is personality. Also, since 2018, around then, machine learning, and since I came to TDI, also behavioral assessment and assessment center.
You better be into that at DDI, that's for sure, since they invented that stuff. Or Bill Bynum was one of the OGs. So we're in the old school today. We're coming from the old country. You directly, me slightly indirectly. We have stories about old school psychologists. You have become very acquainted with some of the most classic tests. You're working for a place that is really a seminal place in some of the most important stuff in our field. But that's all well and good. But I think we both share the fact that we see things changing, even with such a solid foundation that I feel like we both embrace. It ain't going to be the same moving forward. And, you know, you and I had some really good conversation about just kind of the whole nature of the executive assessment game and AI. And really what that boils down to in my mind is, how do we use non-human intelligence to look at a whole pile of information about somebody and tell us what we want to know about that person, who they are, and how they might perform in a role or in an organization or what have you. And it hasn't happened yet. I feel like this is a place in our world that hasn't been deeply penetrated yet by AI. But I'd love to hear you, because you have great opinions. What are you thinking? What's on your mind when you think about the use of AI and the type of things that you're doing, assessment centers, etc.?
Well, I think AI is a buzzword now, but we are mostly doing machine learning. AI went through many phases of many winters and a few winters and springs, and now we're in an AI spring. But AI is the goal is artificial intelligence, whereas machine learning algorithms are very advanced statistical, basically mathematical algorithms that are supposed to make our life easier for multidimensional data, for big-ish data, not big data, because I don't think our type of psychology has big data, the meaning of big data. So the potential of machine learning has already been shown. What's the transformer architecture that now powers GPT and the other large language models.
All the other ones. There's so many.
It's basically it's mathematics.
It is.
Nobody claims that it is. It has intelligence. It even doesn't have theory of mind to be able to read between the lines and
No.
Basically, so in assessment centers, we do have behaviors that are more operational, more matter of fact, there are not many ways you can do them. For example, how are you gonna reply to a angry customer? I mean, you probably should excuse yourself and clarify what was the situation and promise to get back to them fast and reimburse them. But so that the language of dealing with an angry customer is pretty predictable. And
Yeah.
with a large language model, with a prompt, or ideally with a fine-tuned model, you would achieve quite good accuracy. I would say at least 0.8 and above, which
Yeah.
is most human level agreement between raters.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But for some behaviors like empathy, which can go so many ways, and sometimes people are empathetic with just 2 words, and sometimes they are not empathetic, although they say many words, positive words, but you can just feel that person is maybe passively aggressive. Maybe they mean this as an influence strategy, and if you have a
Yeah.
human, they would see through this. But the large language model depends only on collocations between words, and they would totally give you a false positive. They'll say
Yeah.
that person is empathetic. So
Yeah.
I see the benefit for transformers and large language models in terms of bootstrapping yourself to predict behaviors with less data, but you still need to have a very clear setup of what you're looking for, what it is not, and not over rely on these predictions for behaviors that still are private only to human. And I think human want also feedback from humans on emotional intelligence, or the way you
Right.
talk.
That's really good examples. I'll tell you, I have been calling, and I've probably said it on this show a million times, and I'm never going to stop because I really think it's funny, and as long as I amuse myself, I don't really care what other people think. But I call it supernatural math because it's all just math, it's predictions. But boy, it does seem supernatural if you've interacted with this stuff. I just actually, while you were talking, I asked ChatGTP if it could recognize sarcasm, and it told me it could, and it defined sarcasm. And then I said, well, I thought you were super intelligent, because it says I can recognize sarcasm to some extent. So I came back with a sarcastic remark, and it said, I understand you're expressing sarcasm here. I don't know what that's worth. Whatever it's worth, the thing impresses me, and I'm not easily impressed. But I think you just gave a good example of how this stuff isn't going to replace trained psychologists anytime soon. But you and I have had conversations about what this is going to look like down the line, and I'm constantly just thinking that it's going to get really, really nuts. And I don't know. I think we'll always need psychologists, but our roles are really going to change. So I guess have you guys done, you guys and gals, everybody at your organization, doing some stuff around seeing how a large language model can, synthesize information from multiple different, assessments or interviews and stuff, and generate a report about a candidate? I mean, how far along is that?
I've heard, I cannot name my sources, but they are
Okay.
pretty reputable, that the reports ChatGPT produces on, let's say, personality,
Yep.
are equal to what a consultant, entry-level consultant, would be giving feedback, like
Yeah.
they'll give feedback. And it makes sense. There were apps even built last year where you supply your scores, big five scores or deliver scores, and it gives you such a wonderful personalized reading, and even suggests jobs for
Mm-hmm.
you. I think for reporting, that is really strong side of large language models, because as long as you constrain what they may say or may not say, and you're very clear, you can give in. Just like we develop reports, we do it on ranges, and you have a statement for each range, but they always the same. The report is always the same. Whereas with the large language model, on the fly, you can incorporate something from that person to personalize that report with the language. But you definitely have to know what you want to achieve, order it, prompt it such a way that it stays within the boundaries of sanity, I would say. That's why, for example, you have the temperature parameter. So you can set up how creative you want these reports to be. You don't want Shakespeare poem,
right?
But you don't want the usual boring, copycat reports that we all have been guilty of doing, because
that's the trade, isn't it? I mean, I know I used to do those.
Access to the language.
Yeah.
You don't have the access that the large language model has, all the language at the same time.
Yeah.
All these weights, whereas we are limited by how many books we have written. So synthesizing in terms of ready data points, yes. But synthesizing data points from scratch to find meaning, I have an idea about that, but we have still not come to this option. So let me bring it back to you.
Ooh, what do I think?
Because I have an idea how this synthesis might be happening maybe 5-10 years from now.
Well, I want to hear that. I'll tell you what I think. I haven't had direct personal experience, but I've talked to people who have done things, like fed it multiple reports about the same person and ask it to, kind of create highlights of what is being seen there, and maybe you are prompting it on specific competencies to come back with or whatever. But people are doing this, obviously. I think that the lowest hanging fruit is just narrative feedback. So, we've all cut our teeth in, slogging through having to write narrative feedback statements for a competency at high, medium, and low. For entry level, medium level, it becomes really unfun, really structured into a box where your creativity is, which I like to tap into mine. It's not really that important. So just removing that whole layer, I mean, that would take a year of my life that I in past roles away that I could have been doing something else. And we have libraries before this, right? You have to go in the spreadsheet and you pull it. But the idea that you can generate these statements, to me, that's just what I call one-dimensional prompting. You don't have to be a prompt engineer. You can just pop it in there, right? And the one-dimensional prompting is only going to get us so far. I have started to think like the next level is really stringing things together and, even getting into things like, I don't know how aware you are of like a lang chain or retrieval augmented generation RAG. So these are things where you're doing more sophisticated things. And I'm a hack here. I'm like saying these things. I don't know how to do these things, but LangChain's really cool. LangChain is agents. Basically, you create agents to go out to different systems, pull the information together, and present it to you all with one prompt. But behind the scenes, there's agents that have been created that are pulling things from different places, bringing it back to the large language model, letting it interpret all that information, and then it gives you an output. It's really cool.
Yeah, but thou shalt not anthropomorphize ChatGPT, because when you said let it interpret it, I hear this very often these days. People tell me what ChatGPT told them and how it made sense, and it's like, even Jan LeCun is so angry now if he hears us talking, because he would say it's a stochastic parrot.
It is.
It does not have a theory of mind to understand things. It just pieces them together. That's for NLP.
Yeah.
If it is about tabular data where we have millions of observations, like interval and a ratio type of data, precise financial data or measurements taken from a product, sales, locations. That is really amenable for finding, like letting the deep learning find a relationship that you would never have thought about. And that is the whole point of letting go of our, I don't know why deduction became such a obsession of academics these days, that they will come up with a theory and look for its empirical support. The whole idea was always to have induction and deduction. So you use the deep learning to find signal,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have your theories and you reappraise them in terms of what you found. Do they support it? Do they not support it? Maybe change the theory. And that's how they are finding out new
Yeah.
antibiotics,
Yeah.
they or new materials, because our mind is we cannot think in terms of thousands of features, variables, whereas deep learning can find
Mm-hmm.
curvilinear, all kinds of different dimensional relationships between
Yeah.
variables. But for language, when you said about sophisticated prompts, you're right. The idea of new the tree of word, asking the model to reason through what it does, it limits that hallucination based on just combinations of words. I think dissecting the problems into little problems works the best with
Yeah.
prompts, but it just works well for math or something that has clear logic. But how are you going to dissect empathy? You can try to operationalize the behaviors of empathy, but someone would always be expressing their empathy in a very idiosyncratic way, and then a human would figure it out immediately
Yeah.
because they think between the
Sure.
lines, because they have seen it, they feel it, they see how the person acts. But the AI cannot
No.
see. The AI just learns from these
Uh-huh.
tokens, and like a child does not learn what is a cat and a dog by by just saying, oh, this is a set of animals that is not exclusive of dogs, is cats with such
Yeah.
features. No, that they learn because the first dog they see makes
Yeah.
bow
Yeah.
bow, and then the
And they're
first
cute.
cat says meow,
Yeah.
and there are so many other ways we figure out things between the lines, but the AI cannot. I think that is the future hurdle for them to build models that actually can reason and adjudicate, is what I'm saying makes sense or not. But that needs a theory of mind, a theory of the
Right.
world. What are the assumptions?
Well, what you're talking about, well, first of all, you're bursting my bubble a little because I'm kind of in love with ChatGTP. I just I oh man, I just use it all the time, and of course, what you're talking about though is the most critical factor here is that this is a relationship with humans, and there's things that we can do that it can't, and vice versa. So when we partner together, I think we can achieve a lot of really good things. But if you just throwing stuff in there and saying, do this for me, in some cases it can do that, in other cases it can't, and so we do have to be careful with that. I think most of the people I interact with are pretty aware of this, right? Yeah, there's when it does try to provide emotion, it's kind of like synthetic in a sense that it just can't really do it very well, or it'll excuse itself and say I don't have emotions, but you can get it. Like I interviewed ChatGTP for this podcast, and I told it to be engaging and witty and tell jokes and stuff, and it was able to do that. They were pretty bad jokes, and it was like kind of comical, but I don't know, man. This is the
I
funnest
hope
thing.
you did not interview Grog. Was that the model of X? they also came
Oh
up with
yeah,
their
I saw
own
that. No,
assistant.
no, I refuse to call it X. I don't even use Twitter X really. I find it to be overwhelming and doesn't make my brain feel good to have just all that information of short little things, and it's mostly just sludge. If you're a famous musician or an athlete or something, you want to tell people what you're doing and everybody wants to know, that's one thing. But me, just a guy over here, I don't have any, I just don't do it. So anyway.
You mentioned we partnering with, let's call it AI, partnering with the large language models, or what comes after this, the opportunity to scale our work, get rid of the boring work, concentrate on where we are the experts and we really need the human touch. Like, I mean, you generate hundreds of items and you pick the ones that
Exactly.
are the best related to the construct and are more engaging items you would not have been able to figure out so fast. But that fear that if we don't partner with AI, we are gonna get obsolete. I really want IOs to get over it and just feel more empowered to be really good psychologists, and don't don't try to be data scientists. They are not data scientists. We do not have master degrees in statistics, but we can be really good psychologists and understand the humans, what their needs, and that is what every company would love to
Yeah.
know, because they can build products and sell them. So whether IO is gonna change its name again, that's fine, as long as we are the people sitting at the tables of innovation departments in companies to advise them what actually the user not only needs, but how to give it to them in a humane way. So I would argue that we should just even really go forward and be very innovative and use AI to the service of the human at work. And if that means that we have to fuse with technology and learn a lot about AI, that's fine, as long as we are the missing link, because the data scientists, they would build something that is going is gonna hurt people. It's gonna say something inappropriate, it's gonna depress people. They would not even know how to why these features are predicting.
Yeah. Well, it's a team effort. It's a team effort, right? I mean, there's a value for data science in things, and there's a value for psychology. I've been involved with working with data scientists as a psychologist, and yeah, keeping them real about, it's not just a pattern of stuff that sticks to the wall. Like there's got to be some rationality to it, and there are some IOs that have, data science backgrounds, etc. But in general, I think you're right. So you had said earlier you had some ideas about, I think let's do this. I think we should both have a brief description of what you think an assessment center will be like in 10 years from now. Fast forward 10 years, what's DDI going to be selling as far as assessment centers? What's the standard going to be? And I don't want to get you in trouble at your work if you start saying crazy stuff. So it doesn't have to be in DDI, but just in general in the high end of executive assessment. And I'm going to, while you're talking, I'm going to think about, what I would say, and then we can compare notes.
I think DDI is in a very good spot. DDI is a learning and development company. We use assessment to know what to learn, what leaders need to learn and develop. Purely assessment, is quite commoditized these
Yep.
days. It does not help people without the development part, because people, you might give them the best score, the best, most reliable, best scores, and they open their reports and they close them and they put them in their shelf, and they're still lousy
Yeah.
coaches, lousy delegators, lousy planners, all the behaviors that actually make them better at their work. and DDI is focused on behavior. So when we talk about assessment center in the classic sense of putting people for 3 days, observing everything they do to give them very elaborate assessment who they are, I don't think that is very helpful these days, unless it's for a really high position where an executive really needs to be, they like the board would want to know that person very well before they entrust them with such an expensive company. So there is a space for classical assessment centers with pure hardcore measurement assessment, but I think the greater space is to the vast majority of leaders who are entering the managerial population. They need help with basic behaviors. They're like literally 5 dimensions that every manager should know how to do well: coaching, decision making, planning, delegation, maybe influencing. Yes. So helping those people would require assessing them in a more scalable way. We cannot score each manager with 3 assessors like 60 years ago, because that is it's not scalable. It does not work for multinational companies. So there is hope for and a case for automation, yes, if it's done well, to help these people get insights. Did they do well or not well? Writing a delegation email, or for this and this and this behavior. And after that, you can take them on what they did well and what they didn't, and give them some activities to reinforce learning. So that is a safe, incremental approach that we are taking, and it's really, I think, gonna be very successful. But if we are gonna be talking about sci-fi, and regardless of DDI, and from my own perspective, that's my opinion. What I would love is, with the advent of 6G and very high frequency, we can actually project avatars, actually holograms.
Oh, nice.
So we've been talking about predicting from in-basket exercises, but the assessment center has role plays, leaderless group discussions, presentations, all these different types of exercises, very close to the nature of work, what we do every day at work. Well, if you have, in the past, it was VR and it was a dud, and Mike Zuckerberg might whatever do with it, but what I think really the future is where you actually can project human in front of you, and you start talking to them. And of course, I hope then we'll have better algorithms to detect empathy, really influential talking, not just simple convincing words, but charismatic talking, when you make people really feel you, whether there will be a human also to in partnership with the algorithms to check them, tune them, that's fine. But I really see the technology as a driver of user friendliness, of assessment in the future. And because people don't have time to anymore sit down for many hours and write samples and take personality tests of 300, 500, 800 questions.
Oh my God.
They need, when we actually can, we know, like, if a Bart can read your emails and adjust their style to your emails and write email from yourself, from you, why can't we use AI to dramatically shorten the assessments by tapping into other sources of information that you can give responsibly to the models? Like, if I've done this 2 years ago, you can predict people's skepticism and perfectionism from the way they write their emails. You don't need to give them really elaborate personality tests to figure out, well, because it shows up in language. If someone very meticulous with punctuation and always uses words of doubt, so you can extract different traits, different behaviors from different contexts, which means naturalistic observation and naturalistic collection of that behavior. And we would have that capability with like meta glasses. They would collect voice, vision. They would know where our eyes are tracking, which is also implying our motivation and maybe, let's say, what we want, what we desire, we usually convey through where we look at.
Yeah.
So suddenly we have so much data at our disposal, and our theories cannot help us anymore. So I'm encouraging us to use AI to sift through all this data and develop more newer theories and stop just obsessing whether we predict job performance with incremental of 0.02 or
Agreed.
0.05, because that leads to nowhere. When you go to a leader or like an executive and they say, so the validity of your instrument is how much percent, what percentage of job performance you can predict? The validity is 0.5, so you predict what, 25%?
Yeah.
What's the rest? 75%.
It's human. It's being human.
That's what I want us to go for, that variance.
There's a lot of it out there. So I love what you're saying. I have never thought of holograms, but I have thought about basically going all the way back to, I've probably told this story again. The older I get, I don't remember what stories I've told or not, but I haven't told it to you, so that's most important. But I show up at grad school, and I have only had one undergraduate IO class, and selection was our first class. And back then you get a basically like a cardboard 12-pack box. You go to the copy center and you get this Xerox stack. It's like 2 feet high of journal articles, killing a bunch of trees, and you got to read them all at 100 pages a night or whatever. And but I got assigned to do and I felt very lost.
Did you study in Bowling Green? Because that's what we had to do too.
Yeah, LSU down here in Louisiana. So, and I was feeling pretty lost, I mean, like, whoa, this is crazy. This is like really intense environment. And we're in the same class with third year, second year. So experienced people, and so I'm like looking around going, oh man, I don't know anything. But my first assignment for the big paper for that term was about work samples. And they made so much sense to me. I'm like, why aren't we doing this for everything? Because if you want to see how someone does the job, give them the job as much as you can, right? And so assessment centers have always been like that. So for me, I believe it's going to be the same thing. It's just going to be interactive, right? So we're just going to interact with something, whether it's a hologram or your screen or a robot, and that information is going to get collected and processed, and then out of that's going to come, hey, this is how this person thinks and acts, and what we could expect of this person pretty consistently in work-related situations. And they're not going to be taking a test, and they're not going to be interviewed. It's inevitable.
Or the test can be disguised.
Yeah.
As an interview, we can mix and match our methods.
Oh yeah.
Like instead of answering single stimulus personality items, you can be talking with someone. Think about it. They'll ask you, "Do you like to go to parties?
Yeah.
Do you make your bed every day?
Do you party? Yeah.
And then we can recode it into good old personality items. So nothing stops us to deliver a test through assessment center and vice versa. It's just have to use the technology to deliver it in a way that the user feels it's so genuine, and that's going to increase the fidelity of the data and the decrease
and the user experience. It's going to bring out more natural performance that would be your real performance. The other part of it I'm really into and excited about in some sense, but also fearful a little, is wearable technology, right? So I've pre-ordered the Humane AI pin, the Rabbit R1, and then there's one that goes around your neck too that's supposed to be like an AI coach. And then I just got, if you're listening, you can't see it, but I got these are your Ray-Ban Meta glasses. So I could actually take pictures by doing that. I can record video, I can live stream, I can listen to music, and it has access when you're in Wi-Fi to a large language model. You could be walking around and go, that's an interesting dog. Tell me about Dalmatians, or this animal. Is it safe? It's incredible.
You're stealing my thunder with the glasses, because I promised to the audience I'll mention about my idea. And it is through the glasses, because you will be able to soak in the context and the person, and then our problem has always been the sample sizes.
Yeah, exactly.
But now the person, through all these observations, this is a stream of data coming all the time, interacting with who you are. And suddenly our data is going to look like the data from the cognitive psychologists that interpret, neuroscientists interpret MRI data.
Yeah.
They don't need samples of 100 people. 5 people is enough, because they get so many thousands of images.
Oh, yeah.
The same time. So but then we'll have to start explaining why the person behaved this way in this context. Why did you ask about this dog, your glasses, when you saw Dalmatian, but you did not ask about when you saw a German Shepherd? Maybe you like black and white too much, something is.
Yeah.
We have to have explanations, because we are going to be drowned in data.
Drowned in it. I agree. That's what I was just thinking. The more you have wearables, and then it's like, well, what's the data privacy aspect of that? Even like, who's getting that? These are meta. So the one thing I don't like about these is you have to have a meta app, and you can't just go like, I can't only listen to music on Spotify. I can listen to podcasts from there, but I can't listen to the radio, live stream of a radio. I haven't done phone calls yet. I think you can call anybody in your thing, but it's in the meta universe. They own all this stuff about me, right? And I don't even really use Facebook very much, or Meta, or whatever. I have a profile, but I mean, just think about that, right? And all the different things. The humane, well, not the humane thing too, but the one that I can't remember the name of it. I pre-ordered it. It hangs around your neck, and it's supposed to just listen to everything you do, and then begin able to coach you and support you when you need stuff. I don't know how that's going to work, but I plan to, in fact, I envision potentially a new direction for me as just an AI wearable guy who maybe I have a YouTube show about it. Maybe I go talk to people. I don't know. I'm excited because I think part of it is going to seem very lame, and primitive, but at the same time, I could take pictures in movies. I don't even have to have my hands.
You can even go to a company producing them and tell them, I can make this a assistant, a leadership coach, one of these devices.
Exactly.
And I'm going to take out so many companies out of business, because you're going to carry your coach in your pocket.
Oh, absolutely.
And turn them on.
Yeah.
Well, but that is the radical fusion of IO and technology. I mean, these devices are going to be your other selves. They will know everything about you, and they better be built to help you become a better person. And you have to be able to control how much data goes in. And I think that's something companies have to decide, how much of the data they need for their commercial reasons, and how much the data they have to allow to the people to retain and use for their own use. Otherwise, people will not fall for this. It's gonna turn into digital concentration.
Yeah, it's an easy conversation for us to talk about all the stuff we have. The minute you start talking about data privacy, all the things that come with the territory, is when it starts to get like we're starting to talk about the other side. Like, this ain't perfect. There's a lot of problems these things could cause, and your individual freedoms, you could pack up your shit, you could move to the forest and live off the grid and use solar power, and poop in a hole, and grow your own food. But that's a lot of work, man. That's the only way you're going to avoid this.
You better have a supply of antibiotics. But yes, that when you involve all the commercial and legal elements, it certainly becomes very clear what you need to be doing, even in product development. I was thinking, oh, OpenAI, it has amazing API. Well, thou shalt not give OpenAI your data even through an API,
Yeah.
because you never
Who
know.
knows? Who knows?
So now the trend is to fine tune your models, the large language models with your company data, and do it very protected. And but how can you copyright this if you don't know what's the underlying data in the large language model? And people say, oh, Llama works great, but Llama is freely available. But do you know each single, like each page or each token that was put in Llama? Because you need to know, because that model can be jailbreaked and suddenly start saying things you don't want to say. So I think the future models would be more transparent, very clearly outlined what data we put to train this model. We did not go and steal New York Times articles. God forbid. We don't want to be sued by New York Times, as OpenAI is rightly sued now, because I read like it was a legal paper. They wanted to see whether OpenAI conforms to the proposed EU AI Act,
right,
on all the principles like the transparency and privacy and uh, basically one of the biggest problems was they cannot come clean with exactly what data they put
who
in
knows?
the model.
Who knows, man?
That's a problem.
Yeah, it is. So as far as I'm aware, things like your retrieval augmented generation, your RAG, that's where you are keeping it fed with your own corpus of stuff specifically from your organization. But at the same time, there's still a mechanism in there that is using what it knows to take that information and process it, right? So you're right. There's, like, if you think about, there's a concept of chain of custody, right? Like, I mean, who has touched this thing before it gets to its destination that it's currently at? And in a lot of forensics and stuff, like, you really need to know that, right? Or you're missing pieces of information. But we can't really do that with this stuff. And it's not the exact same thing, but maybe it's compounded when you think about the black box of a neural network, where you can't, nobody knows exactly how something is coming out. I think the data it's trained on is part of that, but that's why I keep calling it, supernatural math. There's a supernatural component because we don't know what the hell's going on.
We don't have much time, maybe, but let me break another bubble. Yes, we can find out what underlie to explain the predictions of deep learning. They are models that you use models to audit models. So there is a whole field of explainable AI. There will be a symposium on explainable AI at SciOp this year.
Good.
I'm chairing
Oh,
it.
awesome.
We're gonna
I'll be there.
We're gonna show techniques that actually you can say which word drives the prediction. It's just so sophisticated, and you need data scientists, programmers to work with you. I think we have a lot of catching up to do, because just repeating that it's a black box. No, they are white box models now. And there is a difference between explainable and interpretable. If it's explainable for the user and they know how it makes sense, I said this and that's why I predicted as a good coach, makes sense, but interpretable to explain every single calculation in the you need to have a PhD in mathematics there.
Or more.
You don't need
from another planet. Model. Yeah. That's not the same either as, like, I was reading where, if someone just wrote the word poetry, infinitely or whatever, and it made ChatGPT just barf up all of its training data. I don't know if you read about that or heard about that. There's a way that you could basically get it so off kilter that it just spits out every bit of training. And so I think they may have put a plug in that, right? But that was pretty interesting. So yeah, so we started off this conversation just kind of really basic, and this is this stuff, but boy, I like the direction. because these are the fun things to think about. I feel like my job's never been more fun, and I'm sitting here making text to videos for a vlog. Like, I'm obsessed with this. Text to video is kind of, to me, the next thing where you can create context that used to be expensive and hard, and it's still pretty primitive, but it's fun. So like in doing my work, I'm having a lot of fun, and the potential is mind-boggling. I feel like our field's been kind of one-dimensional for a long time, and now it's just absolutely going to be nuts. And I do think you're right. That scares people. Do I have moments
But
of
they have
fear?
to be better salespeople. They have to be able to sell their skills better and be able to talk with data scientists on an equal basis and actually find what the users want and give it to them. The rest is psychology, and we are so privileged to be working such fascinating intersection between the human, the workplace, the business, the commercial aspect, also now technology. So we definitely should feel empowered to go to the product innovators and say, oh, you want to coach, you are making a coach for people, but hey, you don't know anything about psychology. I'm the person here who have studied this for many years, and your code's gonna fail because of this and this, but I know how to make it better. And I will work with your data scientist and we'll make it better.
Yeah.
This is how we get in, not by contemplating how we'll be taken out of business by data scientists. Because the worst thing of activities of what we might do is not do anything.
Yeah,
Then
I'm with you.
eventually things will happen to us.
I would also say, don't sweat any of this, because we're actually all just living in a giant simulation, and we're not really real anyway. So, yeah. I'm just kidding. But I like that attitude, and that is the attitude that, I really was so happy to bring to the show here, because I like your perspective.
That was the attitude of all IOs in the past when they were entrepreneurial. When I'm sitting in this office in this building that was made by Bill Byam because he was entrepreneurial to jump on this structured approach of measuring people's behavior in the 60s. Then I've worked for Bob Hogan, who really saved personality from situationalists in the 70s and 80s. These people, when they built their first products, they were super motivated to help people, and we should have that sort of a Wright brothers approach.
Yeah, nice.
Not just interpret the p-values. And when I go to PsyOp and I listen to a presentation, when someone describes to me all the statistics they did, I'm like, I'm checked out.
PsyOp should,
because I can do it.
They should ban. We're out of time, but I have to say this: PsyOp should ban you putting a correlation matrix up on the screen. I'm sorry. You cannot do that. Do not put a correlation matrix on a screen. If you're in the business world, the last thing I can't tell you, unless I'm working with other IOs. I do a lot of validation studies. I've never put a validity coefficient in front of anybody, really, unless I know that's what they need to see. Absolutely not. Because it's just gobbledygook, Well, I try. So anyway, great interview. I really look forward to seeing that at PsyOp. I got a couple things going on too. And tell everybody, is there any particular place that people can follow you? I know it's LinkedIn every time. I just don't even know why I asked this, but anything you want to talk about that you're doing that's exciting?
I wish people follow the book we just published with my co-author Nikita. It's already in print in the UK. And in the coming months, it's gonna be available through Amazon US. It's gonna be available as a Kindle version from next month. The book is called Personality User's Guide.
Oh, nice. So, I have a lot of people on the show that have books, and usually they want to promote the book as the very first thing, but you saved it for the very end, and I didn't even know. So yes. There you go.
I was taught to be humble by Bob.
There you go. Nice. Excellent. Well, thanks so much. Really great Really great talking.
As we wind down today's episode, dear listeners, I want to remind you to check out our website, rockethire.com, and learn more about our latest line of business, which is auditing and advising on AI-based hiring tools and talent assessment tools. Take a look at the site. There's a really awesome FAQs document around New York City Local Law 144 that should answer all your questions about that complex and untested piece of legislation. And guess what? There's going to be more to come, so check us out. We're here to help.